And partly what we can hear in the introductions is, or the anticipations, is how much this quality of our true nature has been weaponized and reconstructed as an instrument of torture, and how it's in the name of purity, how much wounding there has been, how much pain there has been, how much trauma has been created. So pure. Even disgust is, a blameless, super intelligent physiological happening, which is saying, "Yuck, bad apple." It's like how the body discharges what is not good for it in this moment. And purity itself, it has to be one of the, we always say this about every quality we talk about. So one thing for sure we can say about the quality of purity is it's not separate. It cannot be separate from what we already are. Our very ability to sense impurity depends on purity within that one which is sensing. If we were all made of mud, then mud would be pure. Mud would be perfection. We are made of purity. And how do we know that we're made of purity? Because we're alive. And purity is, it's anything at all which is real, is a living quality. It's a feeling. And we can feel the purity in aliveness, in being alive. Unconditional to who we are, what our age is, what our gender is, what we did in our past, what was done to us. Unconditional to anything we might have felt about ourselves. Unconditional to what kind of discomfort we experienced or what kind of cruelty we have been through. The purity is part of what's able to experience. We can't separate ourselves from life. We can just ignore it. Purity is in the here and now of our being alive, now, in the now. The happening, the aliveness, the consciousness. And in this now, this doorway, there is every moment that ever was and every moment that ever will be. There's something timeless. There's something outside of time. Even though this moment gets lost and the next moment gets lost and our childhood is kind of lost. This is the whole nature of direct experience. There's something timeless there. There's something eternal there, meaning there is endless time. We go through the window of the now and we step into another dimension, the moment of immediacy, the moment of trauma, the moment of pain, any moment, the moment of not feeling anything much at all, sensing. It goes the whole spectrum from the eternal to the immediate, tiniest micro moment. Purity, 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 which means that purity can never be lost. It's not something that we lost when we were 5 years old because we shut ourselves. It's not something that we have to fear that we'll lose it later. There's something very, very pure in any experience, especially the ones that cut us to the core. And this is an amazing gift of true nature, because exactly when we are cut to the true core, we need that purity, because purity isn't weak. It's not for snowdrops and little girls in white dresses. Pure is 100% pure, like 100% pure anything. If you look at chemistry, it's utterly unconditional. So that's kind of exactly what we need when we feel that our personality has failed, or that we're humiliated, or that the shame is unbearable, or that we can't bear being ourselves anymore because we're so disgusted at ourselves. And it's right there behind the experience, shining. So secure. So very, very, very secure, because it can never be lost. But life is a continuum. Like consciousness, we move in and out of consciousness, but it is here somehow, awake, even when we're asleep. We move through it. Our personalities move through it. Our experiences move through it. Our stories move through it. Our dreams and ambitions move through it. And it's always here, like purity. And it's not here as a kind of, puppet. So purity is also here, in the here. And the here is always here. We can move from the kitchen to the living room, to the street, to a very fast car and drive towards China. It's the same one that's here in this space of the inner space of who you are, as was here when you were a child. There is this here-ness. You'll still be here tomorrow. And it's not because it's in the here, this here where we are right now, but it's not entirely true, because the here is part of your consciousness. And you're inside the body, but you're also inside that room where you are right now. And so the purity is also expanding, sensing the building where you are right now. It doesn't have to be limited. When we fall asleep, our consciousness goes zoom, it just opens up like infinity. It creates a doorway between this moment of tasting an apple, the taste of an apple, this commonplace, normal real life moment of experiencing the taste of an apple. It creates a doorway between that and infinite, eternal source of ourselves, directly through the doorway of the purity of the experience, which by itself brings us to life, awakens consciousness even more. And these fearful experiences where we try and take control of everything, but there's a much deeper power available through this quality, which all we have to do is recognize it. And it can be powerful beyond belief, but it also can be so soft, so extremely sensual, so comfortable. It has so many different flavors, so many ways that purity can appear to the sight. It's almost like there's no obstruction anymore. And because there is this spaciousness and this lack of agenda trying to filter out what we want to hear and what we don't want to hear, because there's this relief of receptivity, there is an enlivening. Sounds begin to show up in their essence. The song of birds is able to enter our body, is to enter the heart, to enter the belly. The soft rumble of people living their lives in the here and now is suddenly a togetherness, a pure form of togetherness. The sound begins to reveal its sensory connection with true nature, just through opening up the sense of purity, through that aspect of listening. And when we do that, first of all, we don't even need to physically touch. We can also already start to sense through space because of this boundlessness. First of all, the space and time. And there is aliveness, and something awakens of consciousness within that feeling of repulsion. Our consciousness now is moving towards this place where we suffer. It's not going to push it or force it or oblige it or bully it or try to conform it. Receiving it, sensing its temperature, receiving its vibration. There's something so connected about purity when we really feel into it. It doesn't need to push and pull because it's got all the time and all the space. All that purity is interested in is the purity, the essence, which is there, forming this feeling. Yes, I want to see you, hear you, feel you in your own space and time. So purity is something which little by little we shall learn again to relate to as part of one of our primary resources in being alive. And it's a resource in being alive, not with an agenda to get rid of the bad stuff and to get the good stuff and to be free of fear or to be free of pain. It's a resource because it's a quality which can immediately awaken a dimension where all of that can be what it can be sometimes. We can feel nervous, we can feel stressful, we can feel like we're worth shit. When we feel we don't give a shit, it's worth every shit. You know, if I hit you and you don't feel pain, I'm worried. And purity isn't saying this is the bad stuff and this is the good stuff. Purity, like the perspective outside of the human agenda, it's all been part of an evolutionary process. Every moment of schmaltz, every vomit, every last second has been part of the country. You know, it's worse than grasping. You know, you shouldn't feel hatred. And that would just be words. Just words. You know, a few years after we first heard it and then we tell it to our children, it means nothing. It's inevitable that somebody's going to say, why not? To experience hatred, how painful it is. How it's like sandpaper on the heart. How difficult it is, how uncomfortable it is to feel. We're saying, yeah, shame on you for feeling hatred. We're saying, it's not really very pleasant to feel hatred. It's a bit like burning your ass on hot coals. It's not a pleasure. Completely different education. And it doesn't really lead anywhere. If you could feel a whole load of hatred and then there would be food in Africa, that would be great. And this is one of the problems with purity. Very conditional, almost the polar opposite of what purity is, this unconditional, timeless, boundless part of our true nature. And what it turned into was this thing which was a way to punish, a standard of measurement, a way to condemn, a way to wound, a way to control. And we do this by putting a cruelty there where the purity is. So a child, for example, 3 years old is, what example should we use this time, is eating spaghetti. And the spaghetti is all over her hands and all over her face and in her hair. And her uncle starts to look at her with absolute disgust. And she's really enjoying the purity of the food and she's gobbling and she's happy, but now she's got tomato ketchup all over the place. And now the whole family, the uncle and his wife and old Grandpa Joe are all looking at her like she is the most repulsive thing on the planet. In fact, all the wrongness that's in the family and all the wrongness that's ever been in the family is now there in their consciousness being transmitted to this little girl eating spaghetti. She is repulsive. And she gets this realization, and there is a kind of shock in her purity. It's like reality suddenly fractured. And she gets immediately very, very insecure, because why is there this horrific energy, like she murdered somebody, coming towards her, and she can't find out what it was, because she was just eating spaghetti. And then somebody might tell her, Uncle Joe says, clean her face. And the aunt comes and wipes it. This separate body, this separate entity, this little girl that was in a harmony, gobbling spaghetti with her family, she's split off. Something goes numb, something freezes in her purity. Now she has to be a little bit hypervigilant all the time. Not really, because this horrific thing could happen. If it's all because of me, then let me do something. If only I can be okay. If only I can conform, the suffering will be gone. If only I can perform right, eat the spaghetti properly, and be really, really, really clean, and be really conscious all the time, have a mirror here and a mirror here to make sure there's not a bit on the face. There'll be no pain. Not for me, but for them. They're the ones that were suffering my being here, but it's never quite clear what's demanded from the outside. So it's a constant stress, a constant pressure. And in this conforming, there's also this need to perform in the way that is expected. Most family patterns are a little bit toxic. While the guts is saying, ah! You know, it's like Granddad Joe, I can't even smell him. And it's not just locally that this happens with our experience, where our form gets deformed, performed, conformed, hijacked into a kind of circus monkey for an imagined request from the outside, which is never quite clear what the outside wants from us, because everybody on the outside is playing the same circus game. It's a circus without even the wisdom of animals. As Bart sometimes says, a big mental asylum, you know, like this hall of mirrors, asking each other for advice. It's a confrontation. Because somewhere deep down there grows this belief, this sensation that what I really am is evil. What I really am is fundamentally worthless. I am something so horrible that even my own parents couldn't welcome it. You know, your neighbor's got a nicer car than you've got, and your wife's getting a bit ugly. You know, it's little jealousies, little envies, little insecurities, little pipi kaki paka puka puka, have another drink, good night. The real thing. Purity is utterly and totally accepting of what is pure. And what is pure is everything. You know, you say you saw your UFO, you know, you're crazy. Crazy is impure. You're out, you're hugging trees, you're eating organic food with all the slugs and snails. It's because of you. People are starving in Africa, you elitist. All of these shame. You know, if you really want to eat pure, you eat genetically modified crops, because they're all standardized and uniformed, like we want humans to be, uniformed, all the same. And if you look the same as everybody else and you wear the uniform and you march exactly right, purity in its essence is about uniqueness. Because when purity touches a moment of joy or a moment of anger or a moment of shame or a moment of happiness, purity is recognizing the uniqueness of that experience, the infinite difference, the infinite diversity of every single moment, of every single space. How precious it is